I sat quietly in the mahogany-lined conference room of Sterling and Reed, one of Manhattan's most prestigious divorce law firms, watching my husband James' attorney try to suppress his smirk as he reviewed my financial declaration. Mrs. Harrison, Mr. Sterling cleared his throat, his Rolex catching the light as he shuffled papers. There seems to be a significant error in your financial disclosure. James leaned back in his custom-tailored suit, the same condescending smile he'd worn for 15 years playing across his face. Darling, did you confuse millions with billions again? Like that time you couldn't understand my bonus structure. I kept my expression neutral, remembering all the times he'd explained basic finance to me over dinner. No confusion. The declaration is accurate. Mr. Sterling's smirk grew wider. You're claiming a net worth of $8.2 billion? From what you've listed as, he squinted at the paper, digital asset management and technological innovations. That's correct. James actually laughed out loud. Honey, is this about your little online jewelry shop? The one you play with while I'm at work? My lawyer, Rebecca Chen, touched my arm gently. We practiced this moment for weeks. Should we show them? I nodded, pulling out my laptop. Actually, James, remember all those times you gave me an allowance for my shopping? The $50,000 a month, to keep you occupied? I typed in my security credentials. Did you ever wonder why I never seemed to buy anything? Multiple screens lit up across the conference room wall as my laptop connected to the display system. Real-time trading data flowed across them, cryptocurrency exchanges, NFT marketplaces, blockchain platforms, all showing transactions in the millions. What is this? James leaned forward, his smile faltering. This, I gestured to the central screen, is Nova Digital, my main trading platform. Currently processing about $300 million in transactions per hour. I switched to another screen. And this is Genesis Tech, my blockchain development company. We're currently contracted with 12 governments for their digital currency implementations. Mr. Sterling was rapidly typing on his phone, presumably fact-checking my claims. His face grew increasingly pale. But you spent your days shopping, James sputtered. No, I spent my days building the largest digital asset empire in Asia. I pulled up my corporate structure. Those mall trips, board meetings in our retail subsidiaries, the spa days, technology conferences, the jewelry making classes, blockchain development sessions. This can't be real. James stood up, his chair scraping back. You barely understood what I did for a living. Oh, you mean your mid-level management position at Goldman? The one where you brag about making 8 figures? I smiled slightly. I understood perfectly. I just made 9 figures while you were explaining compound interest to me. Rebecca distributed folders to everyone. These are the complete records of Mrs. Harrison's holdings. 28 companies, 15 patents, and controlling interest in 3 major cryptocurrency exchanges. But the jewelry business, James was still stuck on his comfortable narrative, was a cover. I pulled up the company's real numbers. Though ironically, it's also profitable. Turns out blockchain-authenticated diamonds are a growing market. Mr. Sterling was now frantically whispering to James, likely explaining just how badly they'd underestimated my assets. The preliminary divorce filing had focused on James's $50 million net worth, demanding I prove I could support myself without his income. Would you like to see the really interesting part? I asked, switching to another screen. The venture capital division. James's face went from confused to horrified as he recognized the company names. These are all my firm's clients. Were your firm's clients, I corrected. They moved their accounts to my management last quarter. Apparently they prefer 300% returns to your traditional 8%. You stole my clients. No, they chose to follow better performance. Basic market economics. I smiled. Something you tried to explain to me during our second date, I believe. Mr. Sterling finally found his voice. These documents appear to be in order. Mrs. Harrison's holdings are substantial and completely separate from marital assets, Rebecca added, all built with her own capital traced directly from the allowance Mr. Harrison so generously provided. I pulled up one final screen, a timeline of my empire's growth. Every time you patted my head and explained money to me like I was a child, I built something new. That shopping money you gave me to keep me busy, I turned it into one of the most sophisticated digital asset operations in the world. Why? James finally asked. Why pretend all this time? Because you never once asked what I actually did with my days. Too busy assuming I was just spending your money to notice I was making my own. I started packing up my laptop. By the way, those crypto investments you made last year, the ones you bragged about at dinner, what about them? You were trading on my exchange. In fact, I believe you lost quite a bit on that last Bitcoin dip. I smiled sweetly. Perhaps if you'd asked your wife for advice instead of explaining crypto to her, you might have known it was coming. Rebecca stood, gathering our materials. Given these revelations, we've prepared a revised divorce settlement. Mrs. Harrison is willing to be generous. Generous? James laughed bitterly. You've been lying to me for years. No, I corrected him. I've been succeeding despite you for years. There's a difference. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and James, those investment algorithms you've been praising at Goldman? Check who owns the patents. As we walked out, my phone buzzed with a notification. Another billion-dollar transaction completed on my platform. Just another Tuesday morning in the life of the wife who didn't understand finance. 2 days later, I sat in my real office, the top floor of a sleek building in downtown Manhattan, watching the trading volumes scroll across wall-sized screens. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since the news broke. Tech billionaire reveals identity in high-profile divorce. Ms. Reynolds? My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Goldman Sachs is on line one. Again. Let me guess, about James's position. They're reconsidering his role after learning his wife owns their trading platform. I smiled, remembering how James had bragged about implementing revolutionary new trading algorithms at Goldman. The same algorithms I'd licensed to them through a subsidiary he never bothered to research. Tell them I'll call back. I turned to the young woman sitting across from me, Katie, James's former assistant, who'd jumped ship the moment she learned who really controlled the industry. How's the transition going? Better than expected, she grinned. The look on James's face when I resigned was priceless. He kept saying there must be some mistake, that his wife couldn't possibly be that Elena Reynolds. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from James himself. We need to talk. About everything. Your call, Katie noted. But the board meeting starts in 10 minutes. I stood straightening my Chanel suit, no more pretending to shop at outlet malls. Let him wait. I have an empire to run. The boardroom was already full when I arrived. The same financial titans who had dismissed me at James's company parties now stood respectfully. Among them was Richard Goldman himself, who had flown in specifically for this meeting. Elena, he nodded, I believe we have some matters to discuss regarding your husband's position. Ex-husband, I corrected, taking my seat at the head of the table. And yes, we do. Starting with how he's been taking credit for my company's innovations. The screens lit up with project data, billions in transactions, millions of users, and a technology stack that had revolutionized digital finance. All built while James thought I was playing with my online business. The numbers are impressive, Richard admitted. Though I'm curious why you kept your identity hidden for so long. I pulled up a photo from last year's Goldman holiday party, me standing quietly in the background while James held court, explaining his latest trading strategies to a group of admirers. Sometimes the best way to understand a system is to let people underestimate you, I replied. While James was broadcasting his mediocre success, I was building something unprecedented. My phone buzzed again. James was now in the lobby, demanding to see me. I texted security to let him up. This confrontation was inevitable, and I preferred it happen on my turf. Speaking of unprecedented, I continued, addressing the board. Let's discuss the real reason for today's meeting. Project Quantum. The room hushed as I pulled up the specifications for our latest innovation, a quantum computing platform that would make our current trading systems look primitive. That's when James burst in, his tie askew, looking nothing like the polished executive he pretended to be. Elena, he started, then stopped short as he saw who else was in the room. Mr. Goldman, what are you doing in my wife's boardroom? Richard finished, learning exactly how much talent we overlooked while listening to you take credit for her work. James slumped against the wall. Your work? All of it. The trading algorithms you bragged about. Mine. The blockchain platform you presented as your initiative? Also mine. I kept my voice level. Even that quantum computing project you've been hinting about to boost your reputation. Would you like to see the real version? The screens filled with Project Quantum's details. James's face went from red to white as he realized how completely he'd underestimated me. But you asked me to explain Bitcoin basics just last year. No, Katie interjected from her seat. She led you to explain it, watching you get half the technical details wrong, while her system was processing more crypto transactions than Coinbase. The board members tried to hide their smirks. They had all seen James at industry events, proudly explaining basic concepts to his simple wife. Mr. Harrison, Richard stood. I believe we should discuss your position at Goldman, perhaps somewhere more private. Actually, I interrupted, he can stay. He should see what he dismissed as my little hobby. The next hour was a detailed presentation of my company's true scope, the technology that had reshaped digital finance, the innovations that had made me billions, and the future projects that would revolutionize the industry. James sat silently, watching his world of assumed superiority crumble. Questions? I asked as I concluded. Just one, James said quietly. Why did you give me an office in your building? The board members looked confused until I pulled up the ownership records of James's prestigious office building. You mean my building? I smiled. I bought it 3 years ago through one of those shell companies you never bothered to investigate. Consider your lease a parting gift. Elena, Richard interrupted, about James's position at Goldman. Keep him, I said, surprising everyone, but with 2 conditions. Name them. First, he reports to Katie, who's taking over our Goldman account. Second, I turn to James, you attend mandatory training on blockchain technology, taught by actual experts this time, not your own ego. The board meeting concluded shortly after, with James being led out by Richard for what would surely be an uncomfortable conversation about his new role. Was that kindness or cruelty? Katie asked as we watched them leave. Neither, I replied. Just good business. Sometimes the best revenge is forcing someone to finally see their own limitations. My phone buzzed one final time, another trading milestone reached. Another billion added to the empire I'd built while playing the role of the simple wife who needed financial concepts explained to her. Besides, I added, gathering my things, someone once told me women don't understand finance. I believe I've made my point. 6 months later, I stood in my private office, watching the sunset paint Manhattan's skyline in shades of gold. The screens surrounding me displayed my empire's latest triumph. Project Quantum had just processed its first $1 trillion trading day. My phone buzzed with a notification, a calendar reminder for James's progress review. I'd kept tabs on his development not out of sentiment, but because sometimes the best lessons come from complete reinvention. Katie entered with the latest reports. You won't believe this, she smiled. James actually completed the advanced blockchain certification. First try. Surprising what people can achieve when they stop pretending they know everything, I replied, scanning the documents. His performance under Katie's supervision had been interesting. Without the safety net of his assumed superiority, he'd finally started learning instead of posturing. He's waiting in conference room B, Katie added. And Elena, he brought something you should see. I found James sitting quietly, staring at his laptop, a far cry from the man who used to command rooms with his borrowed confidence. When he looked up, I saw something new in his expression. Respect. Congratulations on Project Quantum, he said softly. The quantum encryption protocol is brilliant. You actually understand it now. He nodded, opening his laptop. That's what I wanted to show you. I've been working on an application of your protocol for smaller traders. A way to make quantum-secure trading accessible to retail investors. I reviewed his proposal, genuinely impressed. Without the burden of pretending to be the smartest person in the room, James had finally started creating something original. It's good, I admitted. Different from what I expected. I had a good teacher. He glanced at Katie's empty chair. Several, actually. Once I learned to listen instead of lecture. The screens behind us lit up with another trading milestone. James watched the numbers flow, no longer pretending to understand everything he saw. You know what I regret most? He asked suddenly. Not the money or the status, or even losing the respect of the entire industry. Oh, I regret never asking about your day, he smiled ruefully. 15 years of marriage and I never once actually listened when you talked about your online business. I pulled up his proposal on the main screen, expanding on his ideas. Well, I'm listening now. Tell me more about this retail application. For the next hour, we had our first real business conversation. No mansplaining, no condescension. Just two professionals discussing innovation. It was the dialogue we could have had years ago if he ever seen me as an equal. Elena, he said as we concluded, I know it's too late for apologies, but thank you for not destroying me when you could have. That was never the goal. I closed his proposal, having already decided to fund it through one of my venture funds. Sometimes success is the best teacher. My phone buzzed. Another media request for an interview about being a female pioneer in crypto. I declined dozens already, preferring to let my work speak for itself. You should do it, James surprised me by saying. Not for yourself, but for all the other women being underestimated right now. I raised an eyebrow. Personal growth looks good on you. While he stood gathering his things, I learned from the best, even if I was too arrogant to notice at the time. As he reached the door, I called out, James, the proposal is approved. Katie will handle the details. His genuine smile was worth more than any revenge. Thank you, boss. After he left, I turned back to the cityscape, thinking about all the other women out there, building empires while being explained to about basic concepts they'd mastered years ago. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from Katie. His quarterly review says significantly exceeded expectations. Who would have thought? I smiled, remembering all the quarterly reviews James had given me during our marriage, rating my progress at understanding his world of finance. Sometimes, I typed back, the best investment is in letting go of who you pretended to be. After all, success isn't just about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about giving them the chance to prove themselves right, even if it takes a few $1 billion to teach the lesson.